We all know that preparing for retirement is a step-by-step process. But what are the most essential steps that you need to take? I'm David Scranton, and today I'm going to help break it all down for you. Let's face it, no two homes are exactly alike. Yet the construction of every house begins with some of the same basic steps. Obviously, you have to begin with pouring the foundation. Then you have to build the frame. Then you have to install the wiring and the plumbing, and so on and so forth. If you ignore some of these basic steps, you may end up with a shack instead of a house that you can depend on for both comfort and protection. And you know, these same principles actually apply when it comes to retirement planning. And today, we're going to be talking about the 5 essential steps to take before you retire. We'll be covering specifically, number 1, your goals. Number 2, evaluating your savings. Number 3, reducing your debt. Number 4, trying to maximize Social Security benefits. And number 5, shifting your investment strategy, you guessed it, from growth to income. But first, let's start where any major project should start, and that's your goals. You can't get somewhere if you don't know where you want to go. So if you think about the house analogy, your goals are essentially your floor plan or your blueprint. Would you ever try building a house without such a plan? Well, I hope not. Yet millions of people enter retirement without clearly defined goals. And if you're like most people, you probably already have a general idea of what you'd like your retirement to look like. But now it's a matter of coming up with specifics and writing them down. So here are a few tips that might help. First of all, don't think about money yet. Just think about what you want to do, where you want to be, and how you want to feel. 2, obviously you need to include a rough timeline. Knowing when you want to retire and achieve certain specific goals, of course, will help all the financial steps that follow. And 3rd, be as specific as possible. Now, once you've taken step 1, you'll get a lot more out of step 2, which is to evaluate your savings. And by that I mean evaluating your current financial condition. Now, many folks find this step intimidating. Why? Because they automatically assume that they haven't saved enough. And according to the Federal Reserve, only 36% of Americans think that they've saved enough for retirement. But still, the only way to really know where you stand is to take a hard and honest look and to do some math. Consider, please, all of your potential sources of retirement income, things like 401ks or 403bs or 457 plans, IRAs, pensions, brokerage accounts, annuities, and of course, Social Security. Include your home if it's paid off or nearly paid off and you plan to sell it. Otherwise, don't include it because you have to have a place to live, right? But once you've taken the step, you may be pleasantly surprised to realize that your situation is better than you thought. Of course, your calculation also needs to account for the amount of debt you're carrying. And it's no secret that debt is a huge problem for many people, including many who are retired or close to it. And that's why reducing debt is our 3rd step that you need to be aware of. I guess carrying some debt into retirement's okay. But retiring in the red is obviously a situation you want to avoid. Debt can easily siphon away your retirement income and undermine your goals. Therefore, please, please, please make it a priority to pay down your debts while you still have working income. Focus first on credit cards and other high-interest debts and avoid taking on new debt. Now let's hit step 4, trying to maximize your Social Security benefits, which essentially is more important today than ever before. In fact, we recently did an entire show about changes and updates to Social Security for 2022. And regardless of those changes, the process of trying to maximize your benefits hasn't really changed. There are essentially 3 crucial steps. First, make sure your earnings record is accurate. And you can do this by visiting ssa.gov. Next, you wait until your full retirement age to start collecting. And that falls between age 65 and 67, depending upon when you were born. Oh, and by the way, if you wait beyond that, you get another 8% benefit, an increased benefit for every year you wait beyond full retirement age up to age 70. But also, next, please make sure your Social Security strategy is properly aligned with your broader retirement income plan. This last step is what helps many people recognize the strategic value of investing directly for income during retirement, and of making that shift to an income strategy before you actually retire whenever possible. So although you probably won't start collecting Social Security income until after you retire, preparing your strategy ahead of time, I believe, is one of the best ways to help ensure that you'll get the most out of those benefits. And by the same token, shifting your investment focus from growth or total return based to income based, 10 years or more ahead of retirement, or at least starting this shift, can help you maximize the strategic value of the income model, really in a couple of different ways. And this is why this makes this the fifth most important point that you need to know in preparation for retirement. So how do you do this? Well, first, preserve your savings, preferably from major market losses in the years leading up to retirement, because you can least afford it at that point. Okay? And second, by generating more reliable retirement income that you can use to continue growing your portfolio organically through the reinvestment of that unneeded income. The point here is that you still have working income in those years leading up to retirement. And the interest and dividends you earn before retirement is money that you don't yet need. Therefore, you can use it to keep growing your nest egg organically, because that way there you can generate an even higher rate of income return once you do retire. Now, is all of that as easy as taking a buy and hold strategy for growth or capital gains? No, that's simple. You go out and buy an index fund and it's all done. But that's what makes investing for income a truly strategic approach rather than a gamble. It's more complex because it's based much more on known factors than unknowns. And if you're like most people, you'd probably rather have a financial plan based upon the things you know will most likely happen rather than on things that you just simply hope will happen. In other words, a strategy that provides consistency, stability, and peace of mind throughout retirement, and whenever possible in the critical years just leading up to retirement. So now it's time to bring in today's special guests with this all-important topic. Of course, my good friend Jeff Small, president of Arbor Financial Services, a retirement income store in Melbourne, Florida. Jeff, as usual, great to see you.
It is so good to be here, Dave. Good to see you guys too.
All right. And of course, we have one of your and my special guests today, and that's Marc Faber, economist and editor and publisher of the Gloom, Boom, and Doom newsletter, which is available on gloomboomdoom.com. Marc, great to have you back here with us on the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show, and good day to all your viewers and to you.
Thank you.
Very kind of you to say so, Marc. So we have gone through the gloom, boom, and doom, though, that's for sure. I think the Fed is having a temper or a taper tantrum, let's say, and they've really getting ready to give the stock market a knuckle sandwich. Everyone's anticipating a March 15th rate increase of 50 basis points because the Fed has gotten way behind the curve on inflation. Give us your take.
Well, my take is that, yes, there is the talk about tightening, but look, they published the CPI index for January, and it was over 7%. And people in the know, they will all tell you that the cost of living increases in the US are between approximately 7 to 15%, depending on the household and depending on where you live. And now the Fed is talking about increasing interest rates this year, say 4 times or 5 times, and the maximum they will do it is to go to, say, 1.5%. So if you have inflation at 7% and the interest rate is 1.5%, I can tell you this is not monetary tightening. It is relative tightening. But as they talk about inflation every day, the Fed members, of course, academics that don't go and shop like ordinary people do, they continue to buy assets, In other words, to expand the central bank's balance sheet is inflationary. And not just in the US, globally they do that, especially this genius Lagarde at the ECB in Europe.
So, Marc, let me ask you this. Do you think they should do more? Do you think the Fed should increase rates faster? Or are you just saying that they're so far behind the curve taking action that it is what it is?
My view is in economics, the government should stay out and just have the global framework and the legal system and not intervene. The Federal Reserve is a manipulator of markets. They claim that they stabilize market. No, they destabilize markets. They've always done that for the last 40 years. They printed money. They should have increased interest rates much earlier, but they didn't do that. And now it's not the perfect time to do it, but because of the ill-conceived policies and their failed interventions, the Fed is now blocked into two scenarios where in one, they increase rates, the economy will plunge right away badly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you, Marc. I completely agree with you on that. I think the Fed has mismanaged the situation entirely. The last time, though, they did a 50 basis point move was in 1999 before the big dot-com collapse. And so they couldn't get ahead of asset price inflation, obviously. But today inflation is the worst it's been since 1982. It's probably more than 15% because the CPI doesn't include things like healthcare, energy, or food expenses. So it's completely contrived. And so you and I know the numbers are much higher. But the real issue today facing retirees and our viewers is what's going on in the markets with all of these mood swings that have been dictated by the Fed's actions. In the last 3 months, they have literally ruined the stock market forward momentum. They've ruined the market party, so to speak. And so we are expecting a 50 basis point move in March from the Fed, which they haven't done since 1999. Give me your idea on what that move should be. Is 50 basis points correct, or should they make it higher or lower?
I want to answer the question this way. If you have inflation at the current rate, and the last time it happened, as you correctly pointed out, in 1982, the Fed fund rate in 82 was at 15%, 15. And the Fed nowadays, they are wokes. This is the culture of wokeism. They're not central bankers, they're money printers, apprentices. Yeah, I tell you, interest rates, in my view, should be minimum 7%.
Yeah. And the struggle is that's the behind the curve comment. They're so far behind, how do they get from here to 7? And that's where one of the biggest risks to the economy could be a Fed mistake, a Fed not tightening enough, a Fed tightening too much. Do you think right now the biggest risk to the economy in the United States is a Fed misstep, or do you think there's potentially a bigger risk to the economy here?
They've made mistakes for the last 20 years.
Yeah, I know.
They created
longer than 20
the view
years,
of
Marc.
the Fed. I want to explain to you very clearly.
Yeah.
The view of the Fed was you print money, you boost asset prices. This is interventionism. And because asset prices go up, consumption will go up. Yes, consumption did go up, but the trade deficit of the US is at a record high. They print money in the US and the production is somewhere else in the world.
Well, sure. All of that money printing, benefits all of the emerging markets like China because we buy things that they import to our country, and so that's pretty much we're globalizing the Fed in that sense. But you're right about that. But it doesn't change the fact that we're in a rising rate environment, and it's very scary for people who are retired or retiring at this time. And so, what insight or advice would you have for our viewers in that regard in this kind of environment, Marc? What would you tell them?
I want to tell them what I do because I'm also an elderly gentleman. I may look very young, but I'm also over 70 and I still work, but in theory, I could be a retiree. So I look at the world this way: the more the government is planning, and we have in the world nowadays, the leftists, these are people who are on the left. All these people, they want government interventions. They don't want to take any personal responsibilities. They want the government to give you this. They want the government to give you that. If the government says you have to get vaccinated, they all say, oh, wonderful, we'll do that. And so we have a system which is very uncapitalistic, where the government manipulates more and more the economy and your personal life, as we know, as it has happened. And in this environment, I want to tell you, it's very difficult to plan anything because the government, if they could tell small shop owners and independent businessmen, you must shut down your business, you can't go out anymore, and so forth, they can do anything with you.
Yeah.
There's no resistance to speak of except the truckers. But then the government says, okay, we close the accounts of people that give money to the truckers in Canada, and so forth. So in this environment, planning is very difficult. If I were an American, I would go and move in the countryside, in the South, far away from socialists, far away from San Francisco, Los Angeles, California, New York, Chicago. These are all woke cities. They are dangerous. People move out because the criminality has gone up. Who is responsible for the criminality? The defund the police people.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, Marc, just getting back to the financial stuff, I have to tell you, I was just this morning thinking about that, in the late 90s, I actually called that the tech bubble would burst. And in 2007, I said, we're getting near a top at some point. We could have a drop bigger than the last one. But I have to tell you, right now, I feel a little bit more lost because back then, market cycles were a little more predictable because it was based upon reality. Today, it's based upon all artificial manipulation. And that's what makes it so much harder to figure out what's going to happen. We got to leave it there for now. Jeff Small, Marc Faber, thanks so much for having for you guys being here with us today. Thank you.
There you have it, Dave. Marc, thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for watching today's video, the 5 essential steps to take before retiring. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up, to give us a like, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel for new content each and every week.